Right now, the average house in London will set you back well over £500,000. In some boroughs, you're handing over seven figures for a 2 up, 2 down with a garden the size of a beer mat, but less than 2 hours away, sometimes less than 30 minutes. There are towns where you can buy an entire house for what some Londoners pay as a deposit. Not flats, not studios, actual houses with actual gardens on actual streets where your neighbour isn't a hedge fund manager's pied-à-terre. These aren't ghost towns in the middle of nowhere either. Some sit right on the Thames. Some have direct trains into Liverpool Street or St Pancras in under 40 minutes. One of them is genuinely the cheapest seaside spot in the entire country. And yes, it really is on the coast. So here are 10 towns within reach of London so cheap, when you see the numbers, you're going to assume someone's Mr. Zero. Number 10. Basildon doesn't get a lot of love online, mostly because people picture roundabouts and retail parks rather than anywhere you'd actually want to live. But strip away the reputation and you've got a proper Essex new town with direct trains into London Fenchurch Street in around 40 minutes, and house prices that are roughly a quarter cheaper than neighbouring Brentwood. Typical first-time buyer prices here sit around the high £260,000 to low £270,000, which barely buys a one-bed flat in plenty of London postcodes. Basildon also sits right in the Essex Greenbelt, so you're never far from open fields, and the town centre has had serious money pumped into it recently for regeneration. It's not glamorous, but it's the kind of town where your mortgage repayment and your train ticket combined still leave you with money for an actual social life. Number 9. If speed into London is your main concern, Luton is hard to beat. Trains from Luton can get you into St Pancras in under 30 minutes, which is faster than plenty of outer London commutes on the tube. Average prices here hover around the high £270,000, and Luton has consistently ranked among the most affordable spots for first-time buyers within commuting distance of the capital. There's substance behind the bargain too. Luton Airport is going through a major expansion that's expected to create thousands of jobs, and there's long-running chatter about a Universal Studios theme park landing nearby in Bedfordshire within the next decade. Add in one of the most genuinely multicultural high streets outside London, decent universities, and motorway access via the M1, and Luton starts to look less like a punchline and more like a quietly smart bet. Number 8. Harlow is one of those post-war new towns built specifically to give Londoners more space, and it still does exactly that. The Stansted Express gets you into Liverpool Street in about 31 minutes, and average prices for first-time buyers sit around £275,000, a fraction of what the same budget gets you in Hackney or Walthamstow. Here's the bit most people don't know. Harlow has the largest collection of outdoor public sculpture of any town in Britain. Walk down an ordinary residential street and you'll stumble across a Henry Moore or a Rodin tucked between a roundabout and a row of semis. The town was designed with green corridors threading through every neighbourhood, so you're never more than a short walk from genuine countryside, even though Stansted Airport and the M11 are right on your doorstep. Number 7. Tilbury sits directly on the Thames, and its whole identity is tied to the river. This is where Henry VIII built a fort to defend London from naval attack, and that fort, Tilbury Fort, is still standing and open to visit. It's also where the Empire Windrush docked in 1948, a piece of history that shaped modern Britain and that Tilbury wears with quiet pride. Average property prices here sit around £310,000, with plenty of three-bedroom houses changing hands for well under that. The Port of Tilbury is one of the busiest in the country, handling everything from cargo to cruise ships, and a new river transport hub is being built to expand London's Uber boat network straight from the town. with the A13, the M25, and the C2C rail line all close by, you're never cut off. You're just paying Rivertown prices instead of Riverside London prices. Number 6. Dover is famous for one thing most people have actually seen, even if they've never visited: the White Cliffs. What's less famous is that Dover is also one of the more affordable towns in Kent, with sold prices recently averaging around £322,000, noticeably below where you'd expect a town with a medieval castle and direct ferry access to France to land. Dover Castle alone is worth the move. It's one of the largest castles in England, with secret wartime tunnels carved into the cliffs that were used to coordinate the Dunkirk evacuation. The town is also Britain's literal gateway to mainland Europe, so a weekend in Calais or Bruges is closer than a weekend in the Lake District. Trains into St Pancras take just over an hour, and Dover has consistently ranked as one of the more affordable places to buy relative to local wages anywhere in the southeast. Number 5. Folkestone used to be the kind of seaside town people wrote off entirely. And then a local businessman poured serious money into reviving it, and an annual public art trail called Folkestone Artworks turned the place into one of the largest outdoor contemporary art exhibitions anywhere in the country. Wander the streets and you'll trip over sculptures and installations from genuinely major artists scattered across the old town and the harbour arm for free. It's also the UK end of the Channel Tunnel, so you can be having lunch in Paris faster than some Londoners manage a trip to Birmingham. Average prices around Folkestone West currently sit around £310,000, and St Pancras is reachable in roughly 50 minutes on the high-speed line. The catch is that prices have been climbing as word gets out, which is exactly why getting in now, rather than in 5 years, is the whole pitch of this list. Number 4. Clacton is proper old-school British seaside. A pier, an arcade, fish and chips eaten straight out of the paper while dodging seagulls. It's unpretentious in a way that's becoming rare on the English coast, and the price tag reflects that. The overall average sits around £243,000, which is roughly half what you'd pay for the same square footage in inner London. What makes Clacton worth a proper look isn't just the cheap housing, it's the lifestyle that comes with it. Long sandy beaches, a genuinely strong sense of community, and a slower pace that a lot of people moving out of London are actively chasing. Trains into Liverpool Street take around 90 minutes, which sounds long until you remember plenty of Zone 6 commuters already spend close to that on the tube and overground combined. Number 3. Hastings carries one of the most famous dates in English history in its very name, even though the actual 1066 battle was fought a few miles up the road in the village of Battle. What the town has instead is a genuinely atmospheric old town of narrow medieval lanes, a working fishing fleet still launched straight off the beach, one of the largest in Europe, and an art scene that's drawn so many creatives out of London, it's half-jokingly been nicknamed Hackney-on-Sea. First-time buyer prices here recently averaged around £205,000, and mortgaged purchases overall came in around £245,000, both comfortably below the national average. Direct trains reach London in around 90 minutes, and between the Old Town, the castle ruins on the cliff top, and the funicular railway up the East Hill, Hastings offers a lot more personality than its price tag suggests it should. Number 2. Technically an island, Sheerness sits where the Thames estuary meets the open sea, and it has one of the more colourful backstories on this list. Its naval dockyard, once overseen by the diarist Samuel Pepys, is where Nelson's body was brought ashore after Trafalgar. Today the dockyard's gone commercial, but the blue flag beaches and sea wall views over the estuary remain exactly as good as they ever were. Average prices across the Isle of Sheppey sit around £287,000, and older Victorian terraces in Sheerness itself can still be picked up for well under £150,000. According to research from estate agency Savills, Sheerness is officially one of the cheapest commuter bases into London once you combine mortgage costs with the season ticket. Despite the train taking around 96 minutes, total monthly outgoings here beat almost every other town at a similar distance from the capital. Number 1. If you want the number that sounds completely made up, here it is. Jaywick, a small seafront community next to Clacton, has an average property price of around £173,000, and that's the average. Individual chalets a literal minute's walk from the sand have sold at auction for under £60,000. Jaywick has a complicated history. It was thrown up quickly in the 1930s as cheap holiday chalets, and parts of it are still catching up on modern infrastructure as a result, which is exactly why prices stayed this low, while seaside towns everywhere else in Britain shot up. But it's also directly opposite a golf course, sits inside Constable country, the landscape that inspired the painter John Constable, and is genuinely a short walk from the same beach that wealthier neighbours pay triple for. Love it or find it rough around the edges, there is nowhere else in England where you can own a freehold home on the sand for the price of a second-hand car. So that's 10 towns where you can still buy a real house near a real station for a fraction of what London charges.